Hi everyone, this is Uma Devi, Head, Department of English, KCS Kasinada College of Arts and Science. This video will present an analysis of the poem A Valediction Forbidding Mourning written by John Donne. John Donne, a 17th century writer, politician, lawyer and priest, wrote A Valediction Forbidding Mourning on the occasion of parting from his wife, Annie Maud Donne, in 1611. John was going on a diplomatic mission to France, leaving his wife behind in England. A valediction is a farewell speech. The poem cautions against grief about separation and affirms the special, particular love the speaker and his lover share. The poem begins with the speaker describing the death of a virtuous man. He goes to the afterlife peacefully, so much so that his friends are not sure if he is dead or not. John compares this kind of peaceful parting to the way he and his wife will separate. In the first stanza of this piece, the speaker begins with an image of death. He is speaking on the death of a man who is virtuous. Due to his good nature, his death comes peacefully. John compares dying in this instance to whispering one soul away. The dying man is not alone. There are sad friends around his bed who are unable to decide whether or not the man is dead. His final moments are so peaceful that there is no sign to tell the onlookers the end has come. They speak to one another, asking if the breath goes now or not. Rather than explaining what the first stanza was all about, the second stanza adds on additional information. The speaker is comparing the spaceful death of a virtuous man to the love he shares with the intended listener. When they separate, they do so without the tear floods and sigh tempests of the shallow. John Speaker sees the way other partners are around with one another and know his relationship is better. The third stanza introduces another image of natural disaster, the moving of the earth or an earthquake. It is something unexpected and unexplained. Earthquakes also bring along harms and fears. These lines have been added to emphasize the absurdity of making a big deal over the speaker's departure. The next two lines refer to the celestial spheres or concentric circles in which the moon, stars, and planets moved. Although they are sectioned off, they still shake and vibrate in reaction to other events. Here, the speaker is describing their trepidation or shaking. It is a greater shaking than that which an earthquake is able to inflict, but it is unseen, innocent. The speaker returns to describing the lesser love of others in the fourth stanza. It is dull and it is sublunary, meaning it exists under the moon rather than in the sky. The soul of the relationship is based on what one's senses can determine. Physical presence is of the utmost importance to these loves. They cannot admit absence because it doth remove the entire relationship. Everything shallow lovers have with one another is based on touch and sight. The fifth stanza provides a contrast to the fourth. He returns to his own relationship and speaks of himself and his wife as we. They have a refined or well tuned and highbrow relationship. Their love is so beyond the physical world that they, physical beings, have trouble understanding it. They know not what it is. The next two lines reiterates the fact that the love the speaker and his wife have is spiritual. It is more mental than it is physical. This means they are interrelated assured of the mind, and do not care for the eyes, lips, and hands. When they part, these are not the elements they will miss about one another. The sixth stanza begins with a fairly straightforward and recognizable declaration about marriage. They might have two separate souls, but now they act as one. It is due to this fact that when they part, they will not endure a breach but an expansion. Their love will stretch as gold does when it is beaten thin. It is also important to take note of the fact that Don chose to use gold as a representative of their love. He recognizes the elements of his relationship in its durability and beauty. It is at this point the image of the compass become important. First, Don goes back on his previous statement about their oneness. He knows there might be some doubt of their inter-assured relationship, so he makes this concession. If they, meaning himself and his wife, are two, then they are the two legs of a compass. Don't speak of his wife as being the fixed foot of the device. She has the steady soul that remains grounded and never makes a show to move. His wife only moves if the other two, meaning himself. In the eighth stanza, the movement of the fixed foot is further described. Initially, it is in the center of the world, everything revolves around it. Then, if the other leg, the one compared to John, decides to roam far into the distance, it leans. This is the only movement that this wife makes. When he needs her to hearkens after him, then straightens up again or grows erect when he comes home or returns to the fixed point. In the final stanza, the speaker is very much addressing his lines to his wife. He tells her that she has a firmness that makes his circle just or keep it within a limited area. No matter what he does or whether he roams, she will always get him back to where he began.